TV.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer with Randy Davis. I've got two very special guests with me tonight representing the All Blood is Equal campaign. This is a campaign that was recently launched, and we're hopeful that the results of this campaign will mean an end to a very discriminatory and stigmatizing blood ban that is currently in place with the Canadian Blood Services and Hema-Quebec here in Canada. So please welcome to the show my guests. We have Haran, and I'm going to mess up your name, Haran Vijanathan. I wanted to get the pronunciation right, so I actually listened to a recording of you introducing yourself. So everyone tends to call you Haran. No, it's Haran. So, and you are currently working as the National Strategic Director with Fierté Canada Pride, correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you being with us today. And my other guest is the wonderful Davey Sabourin, who is by day a federal government employee, but his not-so-secret identity is also as the chairperson of the board of directors for Fierté Capital Pride in Ottawa-Gatineau. Welcome, Davey.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's get right into it. And Davey, I'm going to direct this question to you. What is All Blood is Equal?
Well, All Blood is Equal is a coalition of about 14 members now. It's a new initiative calling for an end to Canada's discriminatory blood donation ban. And there are many pride organizations and associations, 2S LGBTQ plus organizations alike, HIV/AIDS support networks, and allied organizations who all really share a deep commitment to ending the discriminatory policies that are currently governing plasma and blood donations.
And whose brainchild was this coalition? How did it come into existence in the first place?
So Capital Pride has some advocacy priorities. Some of them include the conversion therapy, and including this, that was very important to us. And so we decided to go for it and ask for folks to join our efforts. And we put the call out, and people, raised their hands, and they've all really wanted to be involved with this campaign. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And Haran, what about you? What's your participation in this campaign? What does that look like?
So Fierté Canada Pride is one of the coalition members who signed on with when Davey asked for the help. And it's actually really important for a national organization like ours to support our members in their advocacy work, and also to support an initiative like this on a personal levels as well as policy levels as well, and making sure that we meet the needs of Canadians across the country.
Now, Haran, can you maybe, for those who don't know, give us a little history behind the donation ban and why we even have this in Canada in the first place?
Go ahead, Davey.
So this really started some time ago. It's what at a time where there was little known about HIV, other than the fact that it disproportionately affected men who have sex with men, or MSM. And this came about because of the rise of HIV/AIDS, but also the fact that Hema-Quebec and the Canadian Blood Services had imported some blood supplies from the United States, including prisons, and there was no screening done whatsoever from those blood products imported, but also those who were in Canada. And so the Red Cross at the time said, well, we need to stop taking blood from men who have sex with men, and then that translated into Hema-Quebec and Canadian Blood Services doing the same thing. But today it makes no sense. But yes, in a nutshell, that's simply put, that's how it started.
Yeah, I think the blood ban went into place in 1992. I think was when they announced a lifetime ban for men who have sex with men, including trans women. And that's interesting because certainly by that time we knew more about HIV and how it was transmitted and other STBBIs that are associated with this blood ban as well. So it seems hard for me to compute why it's taken so long for such an antiquated and highly discriminatory and very stigmatizing policy to still be in place. Why? Any insight into why that hasn't been removed yet? I know the Liberal government, one of their election promises was to end this ban, and that still hasn't happened. And tell me why.
Well, I mean, so these policies generally, they assume that any sexual encounter among two LGBTQ plus and MSM individuals represents a public health risk, presents a heightened risk of HIV transmission. And throughout history, that's how we have been labeled, right? So men who have sex with men. And as recent as 2016, Canada Blood Services introduced a new policy barring trans women from donating blood as well. So in fact, although we've seen some progress, we've also seen instances where those policies were not only perpetuated, but new policies further marginalized some members of our community. And to this day, HIV is unfairly associated with queer Canadians, despite the fact that over 30% of Canadians with HIV are acquired through heterosexual encounters. With the rates of HIV amongst two LGBTQ plus Canadians vastly lower than when it was in the 80s. As to why the government hasn't acted upon that, I think maybe it's a lack of urgency or a lack of political will on the government side. And Canada Blood Services and IMA Quebec maybe just continuing to have this mindset that we, the gays, or our community, generally speaking, are a threat to a public health threat.
And I think Davey's being a bit polite because he's a government employee. So I'm just going to turn around and say, I think it's also,
sure, thank you.
I think it's just underlying homophobia that exists within our system, right? And when you're looking at race and class, and in terms of the discriminatory practices around trans women not being able to donate because they have sex with men, and looking at sex workers assuming and making assumptions about individuals and their practices, when we really don't look at behaviors for everybody as a whole. So if we looked at heterosexual people and folks of different sexual orientations and gender identities, we really should be looking at whether they're having condomless sex or with condoms, right? Rather than, well, you have sex with men or you don't have sex with men. Because, I mean, in all honesty, I could be heterosexual. I can have sex in the morning and donate blood in the afternoon, right? And so, and no one knows each other's sexual history. And then we talk about monogamy and this whole facade that, or not even a facade, but demonizing of the 2S LGBT community, and that we're very promiscuous, right? And all of those things. But we're not talking about those kinds of issues when it comes to this. So it really is looking at behavior of what causes transmission of HIV or other STIs and BBIs that can actually impact individuals, right? Hepatitis C is one of those. And in the 1984 with the lawsuit, et cetera, that continued to be the fuel for the fire that continues to burn today in terms of discriminatory practices around donating blood.
Yeah, and I think this blood ban is certainly shown to be incredibly discriminatory and certainly stigmatizing for a number of reasons, not just for the homophobia associated with it, but certainly for folks like me living with HIV, and to continue to stigmatize folks living with HIV as being a danger and a completely unrealistic risk to the general population is ridiculous given the science and why the donation process isn't looked upon in a scientific manner when we have everything in place to screen the blood. All blood is screened regardless of where it comes from. So the idea of denying someone to be able to donate blood based on their sexual orientation, their gender identification, and quite frankly, in many cases, the color of their skin too, is wrong. So, Davey, to you, why now? Why bring this campaign on in such a strong way now? Is there something happening politically that we think this might be time for some actual change to take place?
Absolutely. So I know for a fact that many people, including myself and many other Canadians, they want change and they want it now. And I think the campaign comes at a time where organizations who work every day with our communities, who see the harm that these policies are causing, coming together and say, like, that's it. Like, we're done waiting, and we want to unite Canadians to make sure that this is going to go forward. And especially, in light of the current environment with COVID, we have seen Canada Blood Services or Emma Quebec put out some call and say we need urgent blood donations. Right. When there are so many people from our communities that would willingly be the first in line to donate. And so those two things, I think, are at the top, is the fact that, we've been waiting, and it's something that the government has promised that they would address, have failed to do so. And also the fact that, we're continue to see Emma Quebec and Canada Blood Services calling for donations because of our blood supplies. The blood supplies are short, when there are so many people within our communities that would be willing to donate.
Yeah, and I think it was just a few weeks ago that Prime Minister Trudeau said something about being very hopeful that his government will announce a change very soon.
Yeah.
Any insight? What do you think that means?
Well, I mean,
exactly.
we've heard it before. So for me, as a public servant, like, I know for a fact that you want to see the things that are said. Like, if you're going to say something, we want to see it happen. And until we see it happen, then it's just, those are just words, right? And we say actions speak louder than words. And if I can add, to what I was saying earlier, it's never been safer to donate blood for our communities. U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable. PrEP, which allows people to be protected, to add another layer of protection, right? And so to have this discourse and maintain these policies when the science has been unequivocal that U equals U, and the fact that more like almost 20 years ago, technology gave clinicians the ability to shorten the window period to 9 days for detection. Why are we going piecemeal, like, oh, it's going to book a lifetime to 5 years to 1 year and now 3 months. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to abstain for 3 months. It's ridiculous, we have our needs and our desires, and yeah.
And certainly from a fiscal responsibility outlook as well, Trudeau likes to tout the fact that, his government's giving millions of dollars to Héma-Québec and Canadian Blood Services to do all of this research around, supporting the idea of eliminating the ban. Why are we spending millions of dollars when we have the solid science that's been in place for, more than 20 years? 1996 was when the first antiretrovirals actually started working. And 20 years after that, we had the launch of the U equals U campaign in 2016. We've had all kinds of studies that validate the fact that someone living with HIV on effective treatment cannot pass on the virus. And to continue to put money out there to research the validity of ending the ban makes no sense fiscally to me either. Can you what do you think of that, Aaron?
Well, I think it's also, working in partnership with the HIV sector in Ontario, in Canada, there's been a lot of advances that we've been working on as well in terms of research. So looking at home-based testing kits, or looking at the rapid testing that's already available, and investing funds to blood clinics so that they can have these testing kits available so people can do their tests within 10 minutes and find their results and donate blood. And it's really having a healthy conversation around what are your practices, what you've engaged in, and how do we support that entire process. So it's an overall public health concern and an issue, and how do we work with it, with the community, and make sure that people are able to donate blood. Because, as Davey said, and I hear all the little bells and whistles around Christmas time, around Canada Day, that there's a blood shortage. Of course there's a blood shortage. I've been donating blood when I was 18, 19, when I was organizing blood drives in Winnipeg. And it was only when I had sex for the first time with a man that I was not able to donate. All of a sudden, I'm a terrible human being, and it's a lifetime ban. So all of my I could have donated. So there's a lot of people like that. And again, I think, the politicians are making it a political thing out of this, if I can say that respectfully, rather than looking at it as a public health crisis and a public health issue of how blood donor clinics as well as HIV service sectors can actually work together to share information, knowledge, and move this agenda forward.
Yeah, because a quote from the CBS, Canadian Blood Services website, says, the goal of the MSM Menu of Sex with Men research grant program is to generate adequate evidence to inform alternative screening approaches for blood and plasma donors, which could evolve the current eligibility criteria for men who have sex with men. Generate adequate evidence. is there not already adequate evidence? It's a real head scratcher. And much like yourself, Aaron, I used to give blood as well when I was younger, and that's obviously stopped now for many reasons. But yeah, I used to actually, I love getting my little recognition pins from then. I'm dating myself, but
And the donuts.
Yeah, the little pins that has the number of times you've donated, and I had my little donation card that I could take in, and I was proud of the fact that I was able to do some small amount of civic duty in small town Ontario by being able to donate blood, and to have that privilege taken away for no valid reason is somewhat disheartening. So I'm very happy that you're doing this work. Now you mentioned, Davey, you've got 14 members in the coalition currently?
About, yeah.
Okay.
And it's growing.
And I was just going to ask, so what sort of, what's the strategy behind growing this campaign and getting more folks involved? How do they do that?
So if folks want to be involved, they can visit the website allbloodisequal.ca, and then there's a sign up form, and any organization who does the work, to further human rights in regards to the 2S LGBTQ plus community, or otherwise, are welcome to join the coalition, because we do believe that the more voices and the more forces are behind this coalition, I think the more people are going to hear about it, and the more people are going to adhere to it. And really, some of the next phases that we're going to see is going to be call to action. So we're going to invite people to message their members of parliament to let them know that, they want to see this discriminatory blood ban repealed. Same thing with Canada Blood Services and EMA Quebec and Health Canada. So really, it is to make our voices heard, and as many voices that we can have to make that heard. This is what I think is going to signal to the government and EMA Quebec and CBS that, again, we want change and we want it now.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, are there other organizations or coalitions out there that are working towards the same thing as All Blood is Equal? I'm thinking of Got Blood to Give is another study that was brought to my attention after the fact, after I first heard about All Blood is Equal. Is there any talk of any partnership with those other coalitions or studies that are going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gathered a lot of information from the Community-Based Research Center. Especially the work that they've been doing, we're talking about also, in conversation with Réseau in Montreal and other HIV/AIDS support networks that have actually done the work on that and have called for that community blood donation ban in the past. We obviously support Randall Garrison's efforts, Member of Parliament with the NDP, who has put a motion forward, M41, to again repeal the blood ban. And so we're going to support Randall on that front, and we're going to invite people also, all members of Parliament, to also support that motion to show to Canadians that, this should not be a partisan issue, it should not be a political issue. We're talking about the lives and harm caused towards members of the 2S LGBTQ plus community, and that has to stop. Referring back to the CDRC, they've done extensive research on that topic, and they have had to put out a position paper which says that there is a lot of evidence supporting the idea that Canada should shift towards a gender-neutral screening process that examine behavior and risk, which we've seen in other jurisdictions who have adopted years and years ago screening procedures that are inclusive. I'm referring to Mexico. There's Poland. There's other countries that have done that work on that front.
I think Italy and Spain are the same way.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I was trying to look for them. Thank you. But yeah, definitely. So yes, to answer the question, we are reaching out and we're wanting as much information as we can. And really the campaign is to elevate and amplify the voices of those and the work of those who have done the work before.
Yeah, and maybe Aaron, I can ask you this. Do you feel that given the time we're in now with COVID, and certainly as you indicated, there's a real need. I think our supply of blood is dangerously low in this country. Has COVID played a part, do you think, in maybe helping to shine a light on this need, and maybe that's going to help bring the change about faster than we've seen lately?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, we've always had an urgent call for blood and blood products, especially around the holidays when accidents also add to the demand of the need for blood products and blood, and with other maintaining of surgical procedures as well as treatments. So hopefully, COVID does, and personally, I find it really challenging that we have to fight to save lives, if that makes sense, right? It's a simple thing to do. And it's just, homophobia and racism and all of the isms continue to harm society as well as the people that belong in it. And so I'm hoping that, with the studies that are being done around COVID and how it disproportionately impacts marginalized communities, how it's actually depleting systems on a regular basis, that we need to really take a look at this and have a ready amount of blood supply on a regular basis, because we don't want to go back to taking blood from the United States and having the whole scandal happen again, right? So if we can be self-sufficient and support our community members in light of all of the stuff that's happening right now, and be prepared for other pandemics that will come up in the near future, this is the time to act. And so that's, again, why this is so important.
I think, Davey, you spoke to the idea of this being a nonpartisan issue. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there is a political party in Canada that has not, if not formally, certainly anecdotally, has said the same thing, that they all agree that the ban should end. So again, I ask, when we hear this from our political leaders in all parties, and it still doesn't happen, what's the roadblock? I mean, does the government have the power to actually enact this change, or is it just something they can suggest to EMA Quebec and Canadian Blood Services, because they're a separate entity, right? They're not a government entity. So how does that work? The government can say, we think the ban should end, but ultimately it's CBS and EMA Quebec that makes that final decision, correct?
Yeah, so from what I understand is that Health Canada obviously will implement the new policies, but it has to be CBS and EMA Quebec who put forward those policies to Health Canada, and then after which Health Canada will be, enshrining those policies, if you will. I think what the issue is that is a bit of like passing the ball. So, the government really wants it, but at the same time, EMA Quebec CBS, well, we need to do more research. And then folks will be like, well, the political will, right? If politicians, if leaders really wanted it to happen now and happen sooner, I do feel like they could make it happen. But again, I cannot speak for them as to why it's not happening. All I know is that it's creating a lot of frustrations in our community because, again, it's been something that the current government promised for the 2015 elections, and something we've heard over and over again every year. Oh, it's happening, it's going to happen, it's coming soon, but yet it's not here. So I think that's my perspective. I don't know, Haran, if you would add anything to that.
Well, and if politicians can work with EMA Quebec and Canadian Blood Services to reduce the wait period to going from lifetime to now 3 months, then I think they can certainly implement more change much more quickly. And we've certainly seen that happen in the COVID era, where money's being printed and services are being offered and decisions are being made quite quickly. And I think again, if Public Health Agency of Canada as well as Canadian Blood Services and EMA Quebec actually see this as a public health crisis, then they can actually make those changes, I strongly feel, happen very quickly. The science exists, as you both have pointed out, both on the HIV side as well as on an international level. There's process and policies in place. Is how do we then adopt that? That's where the money should go, and that's where the pressures and the communication should happen. And there really is an opportunity for partnership here to make those changes happen.
Yeah, and I think I've read a few studies that show that there's public support behind this as well. It's just not the gays all up in arms again, right? It's everyone is supportive of the idea that men who have sex with men and trans women and folks from the ACB community should be able to donate blood, just like anyone who self-identifies as heterosexual.
Well, their slogan also says it's in you to give. Right. So if you're considered a human being and it's in you and you've cleared health-wise, then why aren't you able to give?
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting notifications that we need to wrap up soon, so I'm just going to give the floor, Davey, back to you to final thoughts, messages that you want to get out to the public around All Blood is Equal.
Absolutely. By asking everyone the same question, regardless of their gender or their sexual orientation, while allowing an entirely new pool of donors to contribute to the system is the way forward. According to CBRC's Sex Now survey they conducted in 2018, 92% of men who have sex with men said they would donate if Canada changed its policy. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of folks who would be in line to donate blood and contribute to our blood supplies. So I think that's the way forward.
Perfect. And Haran, what about you? Final thoughts on All Blood is Equal?
Yeah, and I think, if everyone takes it to a personal level and recognizes that we all have been touched by someone who has needed blood or blood products in our lives, and just think about it, if they are in a situation where they can't receive blood and you're going to make a decision based on homophobic rules, is it really worth it to lose that person you love or have them shortchanged because for access to healthcare services? So from what Davey said and sort of on a personal level, I think it's the right thing to do. And so hopefully you do join the campaign. Hopefully you do get educated and put the pressure to make these changes to happen.
Agreed. And we'll have the website information up for folks to be able to do their own research and take a look at the campaign. And I know there's forms there for both individuals as well as organizations to be able to reach out and sign up. So obviously, from a personal note, as a gay cisgendered male, I have certainly felt the discrimination and the stigma around this blood ban. I think when it was announced that the ban was reduced from a lifetime to 5 years, and then from 5 years to 3 months, there was this celebration around it, and I'm like, I'm not ready to celebrate because you're still discriminating against me, and you're still saying that my blood as someone who is gay isn't good enough. So your 3-month deferral isn't realistic, and thanks but no thanks. So I applaud you for your efforts in getting this coalition together, Davey. When I think it was a Facebook group invite that first brought this to my attention. And as soon as I saw it and did some more research, I knew it was something I wanted to get involved with. I made a point of reaching out to my executive director at the Gilbert Center to ensure that we were one of the first AIDS service organizations to officially sign on to the campaign. And I've certainly been working in the background to try and get other organizations and individuals signed on as well. So again, I thank you both for being on the program. I hope we have great success, and I hope the next time I have you both on the program, we're talking about all the work that was done to actually end the ban. So thank you very much, Haran, Davey. Appreciate you being here. Happy Pride, and
happy Pride.
And everyone else,
thank you
for watching another episode. Let's be perfectly queer. Take care, everyone.
The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
At Kawartha Dairy, it's been 80 years of fresh, delicious dairy products and 80 years of incredible memories. We've come a long way since 1937, and it's all thanks to our amazing customers. Thank you, Ontario. Here's to 80 more years.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line.